Nanjing housing project where you try to combine the craftsmanship with another kind of craftsmanship related to lantern making, as you said. So these are deliberate attempts of mixing, very deliberate, so to speak, where maybe the next speaker, Marcelo Ferraz, does not do things so deliberate in terms of mixing because he comes from a city that is about mixing itself, right? But I guess that in his work, and as far as I know his work, it's not a deliberate attempt anymore. It's just a condition to mix things, and that's something that belongs to his personal vision. It also belongs to the city you come from, Sao Paulo, which is, I think, there is no deliberate attempt to mix. It just happens. And then, of course, it's also very much a matter of Brazil. So I think, although you are the final speaker after 11 speeches today, nothing could be a better end than the voice from Brazil to mix things up and to bring some vibe, hopefully. I think it is very interesting that in the name of your office, so we had a carpenter and we had a draftsman today, or in this final panel, and then of course Matti calls himself an architect, but it's still in the name of the office, Senaxenau Architects, right? But in your office, you are not. It's not architects, right? It's architecture, Brazil architecture. So like a big claim, it's not just architects. It's the whole discipline that being represented by your office. So the whole discipline being represented by Marcelo at this final speech, coming all the way up from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Give him a warm welcome. Marcelo, you have the final word.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Oh, this light is really... It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, NC. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here in this, taking part in this symposium. And maybe you are destroyed or almost destroyed because after this long day, I would try. I could sing for you, but a Brazilian song, but I'm not a singer, so I will read something for you, and then I will show some projects, maybe very quick, very fast as a film. Okay, this is the title of my lecture, Architecture, Material, Space, Impression, Action. A few years ago, I was designing a weekend house for a friend in the outskirts of São Paulo. The design met all his wishes, or almost every one of them. He felt that one of the bedrooms was too small. I said that if we expanded the room, we should necessarily reduce the size of the living room, or something like that. After a long conversation, he eventually accepted my suggestions, but was not very convinced. As I left the meeting, to reassure him, I said, "Don't worry, the bedroom is large enough. What you've seen in the design is not the three-dimensional reality. If it looks small, it's just an impression you have." And he immediately turned to me and asked, "But what is architecture if not mere impression?" That sentence still resonates in my mind. I'm telling this story to illustrate the idea that guides the practice Francisco Fanucci and I have shared for almost 3 decades. I think more than 3 decades. This is a little bit. The idea is that architecture exists in the unstable overlap between experience, perception, and rational knowledge, and technicians or scientists at other times. Architecture, perhaps more than any other form of communication, possesses the power of uniting intellectual and intuitive expression. we certainly have our action driven by creation, but we move between objective and subjective values in our choices. This act is accompanied very closely by civil and social responsibility. This is how we see our practice from a conceptual point of view. I would also like to locate it as much as possible, and with an effort of self-analysis, within the scenario of Brazilian architecture. For that, we need to go back to the beginning of the 20th century. In the 1920s, avant-garde intellectuals and artists in Brazil gathered around a movement called anthropophagy. This term, which translates as cannibalism, ironically suggested that Brazilian modernism should digest inevitable outside influences into new cultural expressions. This is a metaphor based on the belief that of our native Indians that by devouring one's enemy, one assimilates their virtues. This movement radically changed Brazilian artistic and cultural production. It is evident that modernism in Brazil and Latin America is not a mere transposition of European aesthetics to the Southern Hemisphere. Brazilian and Latin American cultural modernization started off from a different reality and did not share the same circumstances of the European avant-garde. According to the philosopher Eduardo Subirats, quotation, European avant-garde artists fundamentally expressed an existential anguish regarding the past, which on the one hand drowned them, and on the other hand, they feared losing it. Nobody expressed this dramatic wish of violent destroying the past as well as Marinetti or Mondrian. Latin American artists such as Diego Rivera, Vicente Huidobro, Oswald de Andrade, and Mário de Andrade reached for the past, for popular language and symbols. They saw tradition as a source for renovation and the creation of the future. Paradoxically, the newness was what was already given, what had always existed. The libertarian spirit, innovation with no boundaries, surrealism, and the world of dreams already existed in the Americas well before the arrival of Europeans. The new was the old. It was just a matter of unveiling it. With these principles in mind, modernist Brazilian pioneers, centered in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, took the first step towards overcoming the colonial periods in Brazilian culture. The 1930s were a fertile moment in Brazil. The first critical studies about heritage came about with the creation of educational programs in architecture and urbanism, and with the emergence of the modernist manifestations. Architect and urbanist Lúcio Costa was actively engaged in both fronts. On the design front, he coordinated the project for the building for the Ministry of Education and Health in Rio de Janeiro with a group of architects, which included Oscar Niemeyer, Afonso Eduardo Reide, and was named as the Escola Carioca, a school from Rio de Janeiro, under the guidance of Le Corbusier. This building paved the way for a new future, transforming itself into the cornerstone of Brazilian modern architecture. On the cultural front, Lúcio Costa created the Institute for National Historical and Artistic Heritage in 1937, together with architects and prominent intellectuals such as Mário de Andrade from São Paulo. The Institute, which is still active today, was responsible for classifying, preserving, and studying Brazilian traditions and heritage. As a consequence, the Brazilian modern movement in the first part of the 20th century was deeply connected with both the past and the future. It was a unique cultural project endowed with both roots and antennas. In this context of drastic changes, stylistic imports and imitation of European eclecticism of the 19th century were critically combated. Early Brazilian modernists reinforced the belief that Brazilians had their own historical values. Their agenda was that these values are in constant dialogue with external influences and that Brazilian culture exists as a unique and original mixture of peoples and references. Brazilian avant-gardes absorbed and subverted the canons from the past, creating new cultural and artistic paradigms. As I mentioned before, significant differences in origin and proposals set Brazilian and European avant-garde projects apart, even though they remained connected. These differences help us understand major Brazilian post-World War II cultural movements, such as Tom Jobim and João Gilberto's Bossa Nova, or Glauber Rocha and Nelson Pereira dos Santos' Cinema Novo, or even the construction of Brasilia in the 1950s and 1960s. The Tropicalia movement, led by Caetano Veloso, a decade later revolutionized music, theater, and behavior based on the strong references from the 1920s anthropophagic movement. This rich cultural renovation process was brutally destabilized by the military regime that took power in the country from 1964 to 1985, 21 years. From that moment on, Brazilian architecture and urbanism maintained its affiliation to the modernist vocabulary, but without the strong idealism of the previous decades. It was either influenced by corporate interests or driven by absolute spontaneity, leaving sequels that are still visible. Our cities and towns are there to confirm it. So it's time to get back to our architectural background. Picture it, 1974. Francisco Fanucci and I studied architecture in the School of Architecture and Urbanism of the University of São Paulo. Our school had stemmed out from the Polytechnic School in 1948 under the guidance of architect Villanova Artigas and his collaborators. Perhaps this origin, engineering, explains much of the architecture produced by an influential group of São Paulo architects, usually addressed as Escola Paulista, Paulista School. For this group, this origin drove conceptual architectural discourse away from matters of space, cultural, and anthropological values. We started our academic education under this rationalist, technical, and political orientation, where design was concerned with great formal rigor, which we later found to be constraining and dogmatic, in a sort of way, of course. The attachment to predefined aesthetic solutions, repeated to their exhaustion, was characteristic of this period. Escola Paulista is known for large concrete spans, which are used to extreme as a recipe. During our college years, we participated in the political arena, like many of our classmates. Let's not forget that we were living the hardest years of a long military dictatorship. We participated in left-wing movements, which turned out to be quite a good learning experience for architects working in public and social projects. When I met architect Lina Bobardi, I was still a student. Oh, this guy there. Oh, I have to I became one of her interns for the design of the Cultural and Leisure Center Sesc Pompeia in 1977. This large conversion project opened up a whole new world of possibilities for my closer companions and me. Lina was a dissonant and even solitary voice among São Paulo architects. I'll show some drawings of Lina and for this project, Sesc Pompeia. This is our beach in São Paulo. The theater. This was, for me, my secondary school, or more than my school for me, working 9 years inside this place. Because of the long period of work and friendship with Lina between 1977 and 1992, when she died, we started to think about architecture in a much broader spectrum. Lina helped us rediscover Brazil, and she reconnected us to pioneers of the Brazilian avant-garde movement such as Lúcio Costa, Afonso Reide, and Oscar Niemeyer. In addition, Lina opened our eyes towards references far beyond the European avant-gardes. She showed us Asian architecture, architecture from ancient world, and vernacular architecture, which she knew in great depth. As a consequence, we developed a design practice in which history, technological advances, anthropology, and cultural diversity had a place, with neither a prioristic preferences nor exclusion or prejudice. From our academic background, we inherited the awareness of rationalist rigor filtered by pioneer masters of modern Brazilian architecture. From our incursion into the professional world, guided by Lina Bobard, we inherited Lúcio Costa's critical ideas about Brazilian colonial architecture, and from Lina, we inherited her ability to operate in multiple fields and to overcome historical, geographical, and cultural limitations. Following the Brazilian tradition, we also have eaten and tried to digest that image, this variety of influences in our work: Luiz Barragán, Louis Kahn, Sverre Fehn, Jeffrey Bauer, and others. Conviviality is a key word to explain it. Conviviality between times, past and present, techniques, high and low, and materials. Over 36 years of experience, we have worked in many different kinds of design. Public projects, some of them in urban scale, recovery and conversion of heritage sites, houses, several museums and exhibitions, and furniture design and production. To us, the cultural environment is really important in our architectural practice. We work and design with and within this environment. Despite the difficulties of this kind of work, particularly in Brazil, we have great pleasure in doing it because we are often able to help organize the design and the use programming and respond to them in concise spatial proposals. This possibility opens up the practice of design. We dream and offer future experiences to those who will use these spaces, who will enjoy them, being in architecture, mere impression or not. That's why we define our practice as an architectural action. That's why. With every new project, we reaffirm our belief that architecture has an enormous potential for transformation. Even when changes are punctual, they transform reality and irradiate their effects, whether beneficial or noxious. We believe, as Alvar Aalto did, in the architect as a server to society. According to him, quotation, "There are many situations in life in which organization is too brutal. The duty of the architect is to give life a more sensitive structure. Close. Perhaps I could say that architecture is a tool to promote a better sustainable life at large, or the collective life we all share. Borrowing an ancient Portuguese expression, we practice architecture to promote a conversable life, which means gentle life, agreeable life, life in conviviality. So we need conversable cities. Okay, I'll show you now. Oh. It's running alone, the machine. Well, let's only to show you this. Brazil is this huge country with let me take my maybe more than almost 5,000 kilometers from north to south and from west to east. And we are now, the population is more than 20 million of people, inhabitants. And we have the huge diversity in terms of people, in terms of biomes, landscapes, but we are a very connected people, mainly because I can simplify using some pillars like language. Our language is the unique language in the whole territory. Music, which is very important in Brazilian culture, and football, and maybe these connect everyone from Amazon to the south, to the Pampa. But I'll show something in Finland. This was a competition some years ago among Brazilian architects to design a house in Hanko, in south of Finland, a private house. And when we started thinking about what we had to do, what we have to show in Finland, we discovered something that I will read, a very small phrase. This: it is impossible for us to imagine modern Brazilian architecture without thinking about the strong influence of Finland in the form of the exceptional works of Alvar Aalto. When you consider our architectural origins or our referential network, we come across structures, spatial concepts, constructional principles, use of materials, and relationships with nature and urbanity shared with the Finnish architectural practice. Looking to the masterpiece of Oscar Niemeyer, the works in Pampulha, particularly to the building of the casino, we can see Alvar Aalto pulsating in the details, in the choice of the junctions of materials, in the magic of space, and in the reinterpretation of light. So we discovered in the end, far away, so close, through the means of architecture, we discovered that Alvar Aalto was as important for us as for everybody. And this story that's saying regional architecture is a bullshit about Alvar Aalto was really an important architecture internationally for all. So the house, this is the plan of the house. I will not show all the drawings, like I go very fast. This is the model. And in this project, I will tell just one issue to say the importance of this project for us was that we, in our formation, we believed that in the truth of the materials. And this came down in this project, because here you need many layers. So what you see is not the real wall, for example. Of course, it's wood, but behind wood, we have concrete, and sometimes we have steel. Sometimes we need isolation in between of in the middle of the stone wall. So in a way, was a good school for us to understand, because in Brazil, what you see is what is. If you see concrete, the concrete is structure in the wall. If you see wood is, and here we had to deal with the different reality. It was very good. We use glass and as structure. You see some materials from Brazil, like the white stone here, and the wood in the floor and the ceiling, Brazilian wood. And this kind of gallery is made only with glass. Also, the structure here are the glued glass. So I go back to Brazil, show this project almost in Colombia and Venezuela, in this place, in the Amazon. This is a rich place in terms of diversity, human diversity. To say this is the site of Instituto Socioambiental, an institution that dedicates to promote and to keep the diversity of the forest, but mainly of the people that live there. We have 22 ethnies speaking 18 languages in that place, in that small territory like Portugal, more or less. This is the landscape. This is very important, was very important for us. In the first visit, we saw this maloca, this house, and we said, oh, we can try to follow that solution, a wonderful solution, and invited the Indians to work with us. So we had this very rational square building designed in São Paulo with engineers, and invited the Indians to build all the wood part and the part in the roof with this straw. I'll show you. Well, this is the plans, the structure of the roof, some drawings, and then we invited a family, a huge family, Indian family, to get the wood in the forest, bring the best wood, and the women working in this straw, because they have this kind of material, but they lost the ability to produce these roofs. And then we invited one Indian from Bahia to bring again the tradition or the techniques, and then in doing these roofs, and the women preparing the pieces. All connected by like an embroidery. Here you can see all connections. And here, the basket weaving made by many people, so many ethnies, different ethnies. We use it like a ceiling. And these wood walls are to protect it from the very strong rains and winds. So this is the space for conviviality. And this is the family that worked hard. So we go now to the south, Rio Grande do Sul, in the mountains in Rio Grande do Sul, Serra Gaúcha Range. This is a bread museum in the Coloniese mill. This place received many people from Italy 100 years ago. If you remember Il Novecento, the film by Bertolucci, people in Italy from Veneto, leaving the country and the Hungary, arriving in Argentina, North America, and Brazil to build a new America for them. And they had to build the first thing, the settlement, was to build the mill, to have the polenta and the bread, the corn and wheat flour. So we have in that region more than 50 mills abandoned. Abandoned because during the dictatorship, the big mills arrived in Brazil, like Moinho Santista, the Santista mill, this huge international mills, and the colonial mills were forbidden to continue the production. So and we discovered this with a friend that lives there, and he said to me, what can we do with this to preserve? So we had the idea to have the root of the mills. In this project, we have no clients, no commission. This is the house abandoned that we bought to use the wood. It was a pity to destroy the house. In the end, I discovered. With these very strange and very beautiful drawings in the wall, a kind of bodega, that we use as a symbol of our project. With some drawings, this and this one, we decided to restore the mill, but to have a bread museum and a school of bakery in the back. So to give life to the complex. And we get some money, could buy the mill, and more money. This is the plan. Yes, the mill here, the bakery school, and the bread museum. But the bread museum was to tell the story of that people, that immigrants, that still now are speaking Italian Veneto dialect. Very strange, because the dialect from 100 years ago. And here's the complex. I have to run, sorry. We use concrete, glass, and wood, in a way, in the tradition of the Italian immigrants. This is the kitchen, the school. It's very well used now, after some years. And this is the bodega. This is the mill restored. The interior of the bodega. We designed the furniture. This furniture I will show in the end. We designed with Lina Bobardi, but the production in this case was there And this is the interior of the mill. Everything is wood. Like here, everything is wood. So we decided to use the wood as a capital of the column in our museum, supporting the concrete slab. And Cesar, when Alvar Cesar saw some images of this project, said to me, this is an homage or a celebration of wood. And I said, oh my God, but this is concrete and glass. And he said, no, this is wood, because the concrete is made with wood. All the photos of the pictures of the timber are in the concrete. And this is bred in many languages. This is the museum is for to tell the history of that people. And this is the wall. We could rescue the wall and put as a masterpiece in the museum. Some stones of the mills. Now we go to Salvador, Bahia, the first capital. A very beautiful city, a Portuguese city in Brazil, in America. This is Rodin Museum. Rodin Museum, I will not tell you about how this happened there, but was a connection and a commitment between Bahian government and the French government to have some works from Rodin's museum, showed that every 3 years changing, and the condition was to have a new museum, a very well built and equipped museum to receive the Rodin's works. So we had this commission, with this invitation for the Bahian government, and we decided to project this building. They asked only to restore this one to have space for the works. But we convinced them that it was very important to have the new building to receive new exhibitions, contemporary exhibition, as a kind of dialogue between 100 years in time. And here you have some pieces of Rodin, Auguste Rodin, that still are there. because the museum now, they send back the governments, the politicians, to Paris and say, oh, we don't need to Rodam's here. We have our artists here in Bahia. We don't need people that comes to Bahia, comes to see the Bahian artists, not Rodam. So this is really the mind of politicians. And we restored the house using some elements, sometimes a little bit shocking, the concrete, like intrusion into to have a new communication, vertical communication. And we use the Portuguese stone, very traditional in Brazil, in the floors. This is a passerelle or a canopy, and we use also wood as in a very traditional way, this musharabi that came from North Africa via Portugal. And this is the interior of the house, completely restored. The connection, the new and the old. This is the attic, the beautiful space. We discovered that space. And the new building for contemporary exhibition, all kind of exhibitions. Very simple, concrete. Okay. Now we go to São Paulo state, the south of the state. This is the Japanese Immigration Museum. It was a very important building, abandoned, completely abandoned, in the banks of the river, built in 1920 by Japanese immigrants. The same history of we have with Italian, we had in this place. This is 1913, when they arrived in that zone, in a beautiful river, in the curve of the river, and they built this, maybe a British project, industrial project, to store the production, the agricultural production, tea, rice. And as many of this kind of architecture, and after the Second World War, the Japanese was part of the Axis, so all this history, the complex was abandoned by 40, 50 years. And we decided to do this project without client again, without commission, because I think this is the future of our profession. We have to invent our work. We have to go behind money. We have to help the mayors. We have to help people to say, oh, this is important for the city. And the city was born here, just in this curve bench of the river. And this is a kind of, we cleaned the parts of the buildings, leaving the most important parts of the architecture very free. We built this theater, we designed the theater. We introduced this new element in concrete as a kind of organizing the spaces, as creating a new entrance. This is a kind of memory of the old canopy that had in this place. This is the interior. Using again this musharabi, the wood. And this is the museum with pieces from the Japanese immigrants. This is the stage, double side stage. And this now the complex, and now we have this huge park. And the city was important in this case is that the city take again the front, the waterfront, the banks of the river as the most important place for them. Because during all these years, the city was grew in the other side, giving the back to the river, as putting the garbage, everything here. So we have the new centrality again. The parts are all in this situation, this front, waterfront. So going to São Paulo, this is, I think I get, this is Praça das Artes, maybe the biggest project we had in our office. It's a very, very urban project, very downtown in São Paulo. This is the place with 1,000 square meters to house performing arts, dance and music, all activities of the municipality put together in this complex. This was an invitation of the former major, Secretary of Culture, and this is Avenida São João, very important. This is Vale do Anhangabaú, the central valley of the city, and this is another street. And here behind we have the Opera Theater. So this complex belongs to the Opera Theater as an annex, a support, housing schools and professional people in dance and music. The orchestra site is here, just in this block. Oh yes, this is better to understand. This part is working. This part is built, but not working because the finishings are not ready. They are starting again to finish, and this is closed, the square that gave the name for the Praça das Artes. Here you can see the avenue. This is the Vale do Anhangabaú, and this is the complex. We incorporated a facade of an old cinema, and here a room for concerts, chamber concerts, restoring and incorporating it in the complex. We used this kind of concrete, pigmented concrete, very shocking in a way because very ugly, you know. But what is important in this project is to say or to show that we have lots of plots of sites behind the buildings in downtown in the city that we can use and transform into public spaces or open air galleries, passages like this. So this is, for us, very important. Was not in the commission, in the program, but we incorporate this idea to transform this size of building can transform a lot the region, giving comfort to the population, to pedestrians. This is the block for the professionals. This is still closed, but will be a big staircase here linking to the valley. But we have now 3,000 people studying here, music and dance. It is amazing. It's a kind of great emotion when you go there. Even if it's not finished without the furniture designed for, this is the half passage working. This is a kind of Juilliard School and Lincoln Center together in São Paulo, in a way. All the isolation, the acoustic panels, we used a lot, we invited some traditional women from Minas Gerais that prepared the tapestries to cover the absorbing panels. And this is the place, the restaurant, or the place for conviviality. In the future, people will be here, we'll have here the meeting between professionals and children and students. This is the chamber music that we restored by the interior, everything, painted in white. Was a big fight with people from Heritage Protection, but we won this fight. And these are the complex. This is a big entrance, a kind of mouth, inviting people to go in. To go inside, yes. This is the interior of the concert chamber music. And to finish, I'll show, we have a joinery together with the office for 30 years. This is coming back in Finland, this is important to talk about this. And this is really a pleasure because we have now 20 people working, and this is only to show to you the Brazilian wood. This is one piece, another piece. table is 7 meters long, a huge table. And this chair, I designed it with Lina Bobardi and Marcelo Suzuki. Is inspired in very old chairs from the 14th century, from Florence. Maybe everybody knows that, with 11 pieces like this. And we broke the mind to transform into a kind of modern, almost Japanese piece, or Finnish piece in a way, folding chair. This is another piece designed by my partner, Francisco, where you have the same section of the wood in the whole chair. So 2 by 2 centimeters. And we use many different woods, Brazilian woods in this. We have the different chairs with army, without. This is a very simple bench. This is another chair I designed a few years ago. Shibui is the name. If you have any Japanese here, you will know exactly the meaning of this word. And this is the Shibui family. Yeah. Shibui means, in a way, very ugly, and in the other side, very beautiful. The same word. This is only Japanese can. Some details of our joinery, another table. We use a lot of massive wood and plywood used in boats. This is very strong plywood. This is very new. This is a design I released in this chair in homage to Maria Bethânia. Maria Bethânia is a very important singer, and she asked me to design an object for an exhibition in commemoration of the 50 years of her career. And this chair is called Maria. It's massive wood, very simple. This bench is inspired in very old colonial bench, but it's a kind of wave. The name is wave, onda. Another furniture. What happened? Oh, yes. And then, to finish, back to Finland, this chair, Giraffa, we designed it with Lina Bobardi in 1986, inspired, of course, in Alvar Aalto stools, and but with massive wood. That's why they are very heavy. And there is also family, the table and the chair. And here, many chairs with a huge and heavy wood used from demolition, old wood. And to finish, this stool is a reinterpretation of a very traditional stool in the interior of Brazil, in which we go back to our modern roots and vernacular roots. You have here Niemeyer in this stool. I think this is, in a way, a key of our thinking in architecture. I think time is up, and that's why I brought to share with you. Thank you so much.